Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky, and today I want to talk about the Idaho 4 case. Now, I wasn't really planning on making this particular video today, but there's something that I've been thinking about, and it has to do with an interview that I watched last week with Bill Thompson. It was on East Idaho News, and it was Nate Eaton who was doing the interview, and I thought it was a really good interview, because Nate Eaton was asking Bill Thompson a lot of the questions that I feel like we have. So a lot of Bill Thompson's responses to these questions didn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion. He didn't really seem confident about what he was talking about. So I want to get into that a little bit today, because I feel like the more information that's coming out now that Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty, the more that the pieces should start to fit together. But they don't. I feel like this case is more confusing than ever. And with all of these new documents and these interviews that are coming out from people who were directly involved in this investigation, it seems as though we would see some sort of solid evidence that, would be unquestionable. Something that would prove that Bryan Kohberger committed this crime without a doubt. And I just don't feel like we're seeing that. Now, I get it. Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to committing these crimes. But I feel like, and I think that a lot of you feel the same way, that there's something else going on behind all of this. There's something that they're trying to hide, basically. Because like I said, these pieces should begin to fit together. And it's almost as if when the people involved in this investigation do interviews, that they're actually trying to create more confusion. And maybe it's because they just simply don't really know the details for sure. Because it sure didn't seem as though Bill Thompson was confident without a doubt in this investigation when he was giving this interview. One of the questions that Nate Eaton asked Bill Thompson was a question that I would have loved to have asked Bill Thompson myself. And that was, why didn't the prosecution, along with Judge Hippler, require Bryan Kohberger to allocute in order to accept this plea deal? Why didn't they require that he explain himself? Maybe explain why he chose this house or why he chose these victims. Maybe how he committed this crime. It seems like that would be something that the court would want to hear. It's, kind of why everybody's there, is to get answers. People are in this courtroom because they're trying to get to the truth. So why wouldn't you want to hear an explanation from right out of the defendant's mouth? But Bill Thompson answers this question by saying that we thought of that. We thought about requiring Bryan Kohberger to allocute and explain himself. But we ultimately decided against it, we being the prosecution and Judge Hippler, because we didn't feel as though we would be able to confirm that what Bryan Kohberger was saying was truthful. Basically, we wouldn't be able to confirm the details that he was giving us. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. You did this complex investigation. You should know a lot of these details. What do you mean you wouldn't be able to confirm the details that Bryan Kohberger was talking about? This is why everyone is in this courtroom, is to hear these details. And the prosecution and Judge Hippler had the golden opportunity to hear it right from Bryan Kohberger's mouth himself. And they passed on that. So, to me, that's strange. I mean, something that I don't understand is that if you're not going to have Bryan Kohberger explain himself, why wouldn't you at least ask him where he ditched the knife? You know, where did you drop the weapon? Because then, if Bryan Kohberger tells them, you know, I buried this knife behind a barn in between Moscow, Idaho and Pullman, Washington, and investigators can go out there and locate that weapon, then that's confirmation. You know, he knew where the weapon was at. So why wouldn't they do something as simple as asking Bryan Kohberger, you know, requiring that Bryan Kohberger give up where he ditched the weapon? Because that would confirm that he was involved. That would confirm that he committed this crime. But they didn't do that. It just seems so strange that, you know, they didn't seem to want any information. I mean, you have the opportunity. You're offering Bryan Kohberger this plea deal, and he seems pretty intent on wanting this plea deal because, you know, from what they said, the defense approached them about a deal possibly on the table. So it seems as though the prosecution was kind of in the driver's seat on this one. But they just decided that they didn't want any information. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. It makes me wonder how confident Bill Thompson is in the details that they believe that they do know from the investigation. I mean, if you can't even confirm that the details that Bryan Kohberger is giving you when he's allocuting, then what was this investigation all about? So something else that Nate Eaton asked Bill Thompson was another great question. And that was, did he believe that Bryan Kohberger acted alone? And Bill Thompson says that the investigation does indicate that Bryan Kohberger is the sole suspect. But he says it's possible. It's possible that maybe there's someone out there that this investigation did not turn up and, you know, someone else that they didn't catch. So think about that for a second. I mean, it seems as though Bill Thompson would be saying, we know that Bryan Kohberger was the only person involved in this crime. We know that for a fact. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that there is a possibility, maybe there's another suspect out there. One just didn't turn up in our investigation. I mean, does that sound like confidence? Does that sound like this prosecution and, you know, Bill Thompson is confident that Bryan Kohberger acted alone in this crime? I mean, to me, it sounds like he's leaving the door open for the possibility that there could have been another perpetrator. So, I mean, I guess I feel like there would be more solid statements made by the lead prosecutor in this case. And this interview just doesn't sound like that. So this is why I feel like a lot of us still have so many questions, because there's always a catch to everything that's happening in this case. I mean, they had the camera footage from Bryan Kohberger, who they told us was Bryan Kohberger's car driving around this neighborhood. But they didn't have a license plate number and they didn't have a picture of the driver. So they had the footage, but no way to properly identify this car. Then, of course, they had the knife sheath that had the touch DNA on it. But they couldn't identify the DNA that was on this knife sheath with conventional methods. So they had to go outside the box and do the IGG, which, in my opinion, is still a little bit unexplained as to how exactly that they did that. And they didn't want to come out and really explain how they did that. So, of course, people are going to be skeptical. And then we have these hearings. And right before Bryan Kohberger is set to go to trial, he just out of the blue pleads guilty to the crimes. Doesn't ask for anything. All they did was take the death penalty off the table. He gave up everything else. So, all right, so now Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty. So then the court and the prosecution don't even require that Bryan Kohberger explain himself. They had the perfect opportunity to do that. You know, like I said, it sounds like the defense really wanted this deal. So they had a great opportunity to require Bryan Kohberger to allocute, but they don't do that because apparently they don't even want to hear the information because they don't believe that they can confirm the details. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. Now, not only do they not require him to allocute, but they don't even ask him to reveal where the weapon is. How ridiculous is that? So it's almost like the prosecution and Judge Hippler were both saying, you know, yeah, this is a great opportunity for us to get some information directly from the defendant, but we don't want it. We don't want that information. I mean, that's silly. Another question that Nate Eaton asks Bill Thompson is, does he believe that there was more than one weapon used to carry out this crime? And Bill Thompson, of course, says the investigation indicates that it was a K-bar knife that was used to commit these crimes. But it's very possible that there were multiple weapons used, which, I mean, we've all kind of gathered from what we've heard about the injuries that there were at least 2 weapons used in this attack. So Bill Thompson says it's very possible that there was more weapons used than just a K-bar, but we don't know what that weapon would be. So there's this extensive investigation going on. All of these agencies are involved, and they can't figure out what type of weapon was used other than the K-bar knife. So that's what they're going to go with. They're just going to go with, well, it was a K-bar knife and that's what was used. Steve Gonsalves told us in the very beginning, in my opinion, that there were multiple weapons when he said that the wounds did not match. This is in the very beginning. I think most of us took that as if there's 2 different types of wounds, then it would make sense that there were 2 different types of weapons. Now, could you use the pommel end of a K-bar to bludgeon someone? Sure, you could. But Bill Thompson is making it sound as though it's very possible that multiple weapons were used, but we don't know what that other weapon would be. So that's what I'm having a hard time with, is this investigation, it seems, would have produced a lot of solid answers. A lot of answers that, you know, would be unquestionable. I mean, this is a capital murder case. It seems as though with all of these agencies working together, that they would have the answers. And then when they have the opportunity to possibly get some answers directly from the defendant, they decide not to do that because, you know, we don't really care about that information anymore because he's already pleading guilty. So it looks, suspicious. And people say, how can you question all of this? How can you question the investigation? How can you question all of these agencies? How can you question the courts? And it's like, it sounds like the prosecution has questions of their own. It doesn't even sound like Bill Thompson is confident in his answers because he doesn't know the details for sure, in my opinion. So I really wanted to talk about that a little bit today because I know that there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to people who doubt Bryan Kohberger's guilt and the people who have believed that Bryan Kohberger has been guilty this entire time. And like I said, I get it. Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to committing these crimes. But why does it feel like there's something else going on here? And I know that I'm not the only one that feels that way. There's a lot of you that feel the same way. Why does it feel as though they're trying to hide something? Like there's something going on behind the scenes of this case that involves more than this quadruple homicide. Why was everything so secret? Why was everything so mysterious? And why do the people who were around this investigation continue to, talk as if they're trying to hide something? I mean, this interview with Bill Thompson, in my opinion, did not help out what he was trying to say. He said in the interview that he was trying to clear some things up. And this didn't clear anything up. And then to say, it's possible that maybe there was another suspect. We don't think there is, but maybe. We believe that this crime was committed with a K-bar knife, but it's possible that another weapon was used. We just don't know that. I mean, how much confidence does that sound like when you're talking to the lead prosecutor in this case? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it, and if you liked my video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I hope that y'all had an amazing day. We'll see you next time.